first port of call is looking back on last week. We had what a game. Argentina 25, All Blacks 15.
Wow.
Awesome. Did you see that coming? We sure didn't see that
No,
coming.
we didn't. I think as evidence would point to. Wow. What an incredible performance from the Pumas.
Top to bottom. It started with the captain Matera, but they were all so game, so passionate, and it really did just outwork and outfight the All Blacks throughout, as well as outsmart them at times as well. It was a total Argentinian performance.
It was such a confident performance, and looking back on it as well, we had even noted last week that those two wins against Australia A were quietly very impressive.
Very, very good. Putting 50 on them the week after. That's like exactly. Building slowly. Yeah, totally. Very impressive.
And absolutely, there perhaps were some warning signs in those games, but just in terms of their approach to the game, it would really bring you back to sort of the roots of rugby. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a tactical masterclass here from Ledesma and the boys. It was good. They played solid rugby, but this was a win built by winning battles, by individuals besting their opponents. And you look right through that team in terms of the forward pack, particularly like Tetes Chaparro getting on top in the scrum, Julian Montoya everywhere, the two locks, Alemano and Petty, winning contacts both sides of the ball, and then the back row everywhere, chopping the All Blacks down.
The amount of tackles that Kramer and Matera got through, as well as Petty as well, I think they were all above in high teens into 20s in tackle count, and they were all mostly dominant tackles as well. It was really combative stuff from the whole pack, and they outshone their All Black counterparts.
Yeah, sensational. And it was just a question, both sides of the ball, every contact when they had the ball, and especially when they didn't have the ball, the All Blacks weren't able to impose that physical dominance on them because they won all those battles, and then that allowed the backline to shine. Sanchez in particular, I mean,
what a performance.
We didn't really mention him, like when he was at his best, and when he has been at his best, you go back to 2015 and perhaps a couple of years prior and maybe a year after as well. In that sort of era, he was a sensational fly half. He was brilliant. He was nice and physical on defence, but a really excellent tactician, a glorious kicker of a football and runner of a backline. One of the most joyous tens to watch in World Rugby when he's in flow. And we actually got that last week. It was his best performance as far as I'm concerned in years.
It really was.
Managed them around the pitch, and when he's in sync, like outside of maybe Dan Carter, I don't think there's a better 10 to watch when he's running the show.
He's a very flowy man, and they run lovely lines off him as well. I thought he got good help from his centres, including Chocobaris on debut, was just running hard lines to give him options all day. And he just really pulled all of the strings. The little chip over the top that, like, most people know is coming under penalty advantage, that little drop on the toe, but he executed it so well.
Dropped it. I mean, the Wallabies got a try last week from Reece Hodge doing something similar against the All Black Blitz. So absolutely, they were coming flying out. He dropped it on a sixpence, got a bit of luck with the bounce, and scooped up, and away you go. But absolutely, it's a lovely play on penalty advantage. But I mean, he was stroking the ball so well
all day long.
And there's an often at times you can be guilty of sort of glossing over the place kicking aspect, but his place kicking was sensational.
And it was a difference maker. It edged them out of the contest when they were all over the contest and owning it for the early parts of the game, and then the middle part of the game as well. It was the difference between the teams. The controlling element was coming through Sanchez, but then also good credit to his halfback partner as well, who Cabelli set a lovely tempo. I've had my doubts about Cabelli, but he didn't seem to play an inaccurate pass throughout the whole thing. Got his forward runners to picking the right ones and putting them into space. And then Sanchez pulling the strings outside him. It was a lovely Argentinian performance.
It was sensational from the two halfbacks in terms of the way they moved the ball around. Wonderful. It's interesting as well that they've talked a little bit about, one of the things they'd said is that in times gone by they've tried to copy other teams, and now they're trying to go back to sort of what is Argentine rugby. We do things slightly different, our own way, sort of very similar to the sort of stuff Eddie Jones was saying about Japan when he was in charge there. Like, we have to create a Japanese form of rugby, and they're talking about creating an Argentine form of rugby. And it was so passionate, it was so based on work rate, they were so organised and together as a unit. But just seeing sort of the passion, and then coming from the passion, the focus and drive that they all had, and the synchronization that they all had, putting everything into every play, sort of very much wearing on the nose that they're putting their heart and soul out there for their country. It's what's inspired the world, you know. Matera with that comment to Angus Gardner
early in the game,
saying like, I'm playing for my country, they must show respect. That kind of stuff, like,
brilliant.
We have, especially with the lack of crowds up north, we haven't really seen that same level of sort of drive coming from teams. A lot of teams are more process driven, like to sort of stay above that fray, but they really embraced it. And you know, it wasn't even a question of picking the All Blacks apart tactically, as I say, like they did. And this is why they didn't, you know, go to the corner off penalties. They didn't try and like rack up a score. It wasn't that case of an underdog team, as you often point out, having to take tries. It was a case of a team who believed they could just get on top of the All Blacks and were just determined to win every play and every moment.
What is that you say, when you're kicking 3-pointers, it takes a lot of winning the game, but they won that game in a lot of areas. They won most of the game. They won it all. Like the All Blacks only fired their shots late on, and it wasn't a case of this being an underdog team. It's like we've seen with Argentina, the fact that they're not travelling, they're in a camp. They had weeks to prepare. They had 2 games leading into it, and like we see them in World Cup form. Obviously last year was a bit disappointing for them, but generally when they arrive at a World Cup, certainly their autumn form is nothing to go on. Even their Rugby Championship form sometimes, because they're being jetting around all over the globe, and surely jet lag and fatigue is a factor. Didn't seem to be here at all, and it just meant that they
when
managed
you've
to
been
get
in
their
camp for that
right.
long and everyone's fit and everybody's healthy, it's actually a great and unique thing for these guys. Obviously exploited to the fullest degree. I mean, they seemed so comfortable with each other and trusting each other.
100%. And even little setbacks like Carreras going off in the first half from fullback, but then Imhoff is able to kind of marshal that back three as well. It was just a very assured performance from a team that we hadn't seen all year.
Born of limiting the opportunities for the All Blacks to get into the game, and we will touch on the All Blacks obviously as well. They had their own situation in the game, but from a Pumas point of view, in terms of the raw stats, their missed tackle count was extremely low. I'm not sure exactly what it was. I think Justin Marshall was saying they didn't miss a tackle all game, but it looked like they missed some.
We did see some missed tackles for sure, but it was a small degree. Certainly in the multi-phase, they were very comfortable.
But they were making tackles and making dominant tackles, and then on the ball, one handling error in the whole game. That just sucks the All Blacks out. I mean, the All Blacks at the moment, we were talking about them last week, trying to shock the Pumas, return to test rugby style. They weren't able to do that. The Pumas stopped them from imposing their physicality, limited the number of opportunities they gave them off turnover, and as a result the All Blacks just didn't have the tools to respond, and they could all day try and run around the corner, try and carry through the middle of them, and the Pumas just were not relenting.
No,
they were so ready for this game. They'd done a job, for example, on Caleb Clark, who was getting like the Jonah Lomu treatment. If you go back to like 95 World Cup final, every time he was getting the ball there were Pumas swarming on him,
converging around him, and
he never got anything
space.
off.
No, it's true.
And Artie Sevilla likewise. Every time he got the ball, he was swarmed, attacked, stopped.
No, they were game for that fight in the tight areas, and the All Blacks were made to rue just the fact that they've been leaning on their physicality. It was what saw them over in that Bledisloe thing. The difference between the sides was All Black physicality when it came to the Wallabies, but the Pumas were more than ready for it and more than a match. They managed to look collectively just very dangerous on probing offense. Didn't necessarily manifest itself in tries, but they scored more than the All Blacks, and it won little battles.
Yielded pressure, but they did this at set piece, they did this at the breakdown, they did this with the ball and without the ball. They yielded pressure, got on top of their opposite man, and then the All Blacks relented and gave penalties away. And that played them into the game. And then Sanchez kicked them over. I mean, that was it. It was just a really straightforward, winning every battle type of victory. And from an All Black point of view, like, losing every battle is a serious problem as well.
No, it's true. I suppose we can move forward to the All Blacks, because obviously, as much as this is a great and famous win for the Argentinians, it's a pretty grisly and irritating defeat for an All Black fan and for the All Blacks in general.
There's sort of uproar in the camp this week. I mean, since it's happened, Sam Cane has had a pop at some fans for having a pop at him, or having a pop
pops back everywhere,
popping away. But I mean, it's something that we. It's something that's actually longer in the making, this undoing of the All Blacks, than just Foster, and it dates back, I think, to Hansen. I think you're starting to see some Kiwi fans saying this, that really since the Lions tour and since that noticeable change that they went on when they tried to beat the Lions up front, instead of sort of embracing their old school run the ball around them. They were kicking threes, trying to win forward battles, and they ended up drawing the series.
Ignominiously for themselves, and it has kind of manifested itself in a new style of play for them.
Exactly, they've gone more and more down that threshold, and they've been less and less creative in terms of the centres. Most of their tries in terms of creativity in the run game aren't coming off multi-phase or even first phase. They're coming off turnover ball and chaos
kick
plays,
return, that kind of stuff.
Which is always it's a lovely thing that they have, and it's still a lovely thing that they have.
It's a huge asset, yeah.
But when it's dropped, when teams limit their errors, when teams don't play them
or even
into
when
the game,
they stuff the first phase, they even a couple of times in this game they managed to pounce on a kick that wasn't necessarily loose. It still found grass, but at the times they looked most cohesive was the one phase when they just gathered the kicked ball, and then they all suddenly snapped into focus and managed to make a few yards. But as soon as the guys tackled, then the multi-phase offense comes in, and it just becomes a bit more stagnant for them.
It's something that's been missing for a while, and what they've done this year, what they did in Bledisloe, and what you saw them even doing in games gone by. It's what sort of you saw England sort of paint this picture against them as well last year, where they just could not win a contact, and then they couldn't do anything. Is that there actually isn't a lot of shape to the back line.
Yeah.
Like, you don't get the impression that they're running clever shapes. Like, it's very much 10, 12, 13. Sometimes you get pods of forwards and Ardi Savia on the wing, but they're not running patterns. They're not like, there's not basic screen shapes. It's not like watching England where guy gets the ball, everyone knows their job, there's a pod here, different guys are picking different lines, the out half has an idea of who he's going to fix and who he's going to give the ball to, but he can change that up and pick another option depending on what's right. And then the passing is crisp from there. The All Blacks very much play heads up rugby, and that's sort of what they're coached and disciplined to do. But without winning those forward battles and without any real structure, when it's in a multi-phase situation, when you're in the middle of the field with ruck ball and you're up against a team that are flying at the line, not missing tackles, not giving you an inch, it just yields no creativity. And you don't have a situation where you've Barrett and Moonga in the back line and they're not linking up with one another.
They're not linking up on the multi-phase especially. There's a disconnect, and it starts with the centres. I was initially critical of Moonga for his lack of control during the game, but then on rewatching some of it, the lines all day that were run off him from the centres were rubbish. They were either like right beside him where you couldn't pass to them, but they were smothering the space and they're both running at the same channel, or they were just tight lines, like narrow cutting lines that are kind of in the passing lane for Barrett out wide, so you have to pick one of them, and none of them's the killer line. Like you can, there is such a thing as the killer line where you can come straight in on a hard one and manage to find the gap, but they weren't really. They were just trucking it up, and then they were very often behind the gain line, and it was stifled, no rhythm in it.
And that yields... That's a problem that comes from a lack of shape, in my view. Like, I think they need to have just a little bit of structure to what they're doing on offense, and then within that, like the players, the All Black players are still talented enough that they know what to do when the 4-on-3s come.
Oh, for sure.
And when
you see it on kick
when the open space comes. But what's happening in the multi-phase is they have to try and work those in. And what they did against Australia in those games that they won was owned the contact area, owned the game,
smashed them back.
Patrick Tuipulotus and the like were just on top of it, and Argentina didn't give that to them.
No, if anything, they outworked them there. Like, Petty was more impressive than Tuipulotu, and even Whitelock as well. Alan Mano was probably more impressive in the contact zone. They were just, as soon as they're met there, they're not as big and strong as all these other packs. Like, that's why it's probably wrong-headed. And it was something that was annoying us about Ireland as well, in terms of our approach going into the last World Cup, looking at how overly physical we were kind of making the point of focus for the game plan. And it's like, yeah, that's going to work against most teams for sure. You're bigger than most teams, but you're not bigger than the Springboks. You're not bigger than England. You're probably not even bigger than Wales if you're the All Blacks thing. And it's like, what are you doing this for? What are your main assets? Like, your main asset used to be just being faster, being more skillful. Whereas, like, if you're going to try and bully teams, you're going to bully the majority of teams. You can get away with it against sometimes the Wallabies, but any tier 2 side as well. But it's probably not the wisest course in terms of utilising your assets and staying true to yourselves. Sure, compliments going to Argentina for trying to rediscover their own flair and how they want to play the game, marrying really good scrum dominance in that game with silky backs and lovely assured halfbacks and a good footballing instinct. The All Blacks need to rediscover what they're about.
They do 100%. And I mean, it's more difficult obviously when you haven't got... I mean, if I was to pick out a few, I would say, like, if you go back to the 2015 team, you know, Nonu's, Sonny Bill Williams, Conrad Smith and Ben Smith now gone as well. Those are guys who haven't been replaced. And when you look at what's coming in behind, like, I'm especially thinking, like, Damien McKenzie comes off the bench again and he's completely frozen out of the game. I don't hate, in fact, I quite like the Barrett Moonga if they could ever just link up. I don't like Geordie Barrett's a guy they keep getting in there who I think isn't really a very good offensive player. He's not a very good All Black style fullback. And then the two centres, obviously, Goodhue and Leonard Brown, just not distributing, not creating, no kind of form.
Not even dominating collision zones.
No kind of form between the two of them as well. And so they really do have things to ponder, because the Laumape and Geordie Barrett option in behind is actually more bludgeoning and less creative even than what's there now.
Yes.
So they
That's
definitely...
why we were excited about Rico in the 13 channel, and he showed good form for the Blues, but then granted he did kind of botch his chance with that drop ball, and that's several bad plays.
Well, one wonders if they're going to go back to him, because that took place in a drawn game. They've lost twice since then. But they're going to have to figure something out in the centres, and they're going to have to work some shape into their attack. It is simply not enough to say we trust our boys to play. When you're working a multi-phase, it's just not going to work like that.
No, the game's kind of moved on from that.
Yeah, and you don't have the Nonus and the Sonny Bill Williams and the Ben Smith. You have great players.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them get Will Jordan out there, get the form guys out there.
Where's he been? He's been...
But they don't actually have the raw, like, supreme, dominant talent that they had in that era to make that kind of laissez-faire attitude to attacking structure work.
Yes.
Against good defences.
Yeah, and game defences, which is what they were facing here. And they were just constantly outworked, outmatched everywhere.
Yeah.
Just a special mention to Dane Coles as well, who put in... My God, I love Dane Coles, but it was his worst performance I've seen from him in an All Black shirt. We saw none of his...
The slap in the face
penalty reversal. That's just every bat, and you see that instinct in him. He is prickly and combative, which can be a good thing, but we didn't see any of his running or distribution game. They didn't really put him in that channel. And then the whole front row that they picked as well, what was it, Moody, Coles and Lomax.
Missed
Tuongafasi in a big way. That was shorn of heft, and it's just... They had Dane Coles in the tight channels where he's not at his best. It was a kind of a disjointed mess of a thing, the overall, but the front row was a little microcosm of it, I thought. And they lost their scrum battle. Yeah, indeed. And with the encouraging thing, obviously, to go back to the history of it, the Pumas now add themselves to the list of teams. They had never beaten the All Blacks. They have done so now. 29 attempts, I think, is it? Yes, which was curiously the exact same amount of attempts it took Ireland to beat the All Blacks. Ireland beat them on match number 29 as well. There you go. We know how good it can feel. Yeah, congratulations in a neutral venue as well. So it's cool. It was honestly, it was so heartwarming to see that there were presumably Sydney-based Argentine supporters in the stands. Yes, and they were great, jumping up and down, bringing song and bringing colour. Yeah, something that the Aussie fans and the All Black fans might have been bamboozled by. The chanting and the noise out of them was fantastic. Are they hovering over the Black Betty button to just drown them out with a bit of... Well, indeed, but they bring phenomenal colour to the game, and having a Pumas side and that, all of South American rugby is coming, as we've seen, but a Pumas side in particular that can mix it with the best is just a really great thing for our game. They bring so much colour and innovation and a new flavour of rugby to it. So it just makes for a much more exciting Tri-Nations tournament. And it does. Blows it right open. Yeah, and I think you have to be very, very excited for the Pumas and for Southern Hemisphere rugby to see them pull off a performance like that. Some phenomenal players, and I think gone are the days where the Pumas are going to be considered rank outsiders, or at least one would hope in this competition. No, I think they may have quelled that for quite comprehensively with that performance, and I'm looking forward to the game this week. Sure. Yeah, 100%. Congratulations, Pumas. Congratulations. Yes, there were a load of areas in the All Black team that were there to be exploited, even in the games that they were winning against the Wallabies, and we were kind of half pointing them out when we were like, oh yeah, they won, they look good, but I'm curious to see what happens if they get matched in this area, in that area, and this area. And the Pumas did their homework so well, they stayed so focused, and they came out and they beat them up in every single one of those key areas, owned the game, and you can't say anything else other than just a massive congratulations to them and fair play. Serious team. Absolutely. Vamos los Pumas. Thank you very much for watching that video. If you're new here, please do like and subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified when we upload again. But mainly, please drop a comment down below. We enjoy hearing your thoughts on it. Thanks.